BBC News with Sue Montgomery. After days of frantic negotiations in Israel, a coalition of opposition parties has been formed to oust the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from power. It still needs to win support in the Knesset. Yolande Nell reports from Jerusalem.
Israel does look set for a dramatic change, with Benjamin Netanyahu, the man who's dominated its political scene and foreign relations for over a decade, pushed into opposition. Under the new power-sharing plan, the right-wing nationalist Naftali Bennett would serve first as Prime Minister for 2 years, with the centrist politician Yair Lapid then replacing him. What's being called the Government for Change will be made up of parties from the liberal left to the hard right. It will include, for the first time ever in Israeli politics, some Arab lawmakers. But it will have a razor-thin majority, just 61 out of 120 seats.
The European Union envoy Enrique Mora, who's coordinating talks on reviving the Iran nuclear deal, says he believes an agreement could be reached at the next round, which is due to start next week. The 2015 deal between Iran and Western powers began to unravel when the former US President Donald Trump pulled Washington out of the agreement in 2018 and reimposed crippling sanctions on Tehran. The US space agency NASA has announced 2 new missions to Venus, aimed at understanding why Earth's nearest planetary neighbour became a fiery hellscape while our own planet thrived. Pierre Vickery reports.
According to the agency's newly appointed administrator, Bill Nelson, the 2 missions will offer the science community the chance to investigate a planet we haven't been to in more than 30 years. An initial development budget of about $500 million has been allocated to the 2 missions, which were picked from a competitive, peer-reviewed process. They're scheduled to launch at the end of the decade. NASA's last Venus orbiter was Magellan, which reached the planet in 1990, but other vessels have made flybys since then.
A judge in Nicaragua has ordered the arrest of the opposition politician and newspaper editor Cristiana Chamorro for money laundering and other charges. Relatives say she's being held inside her house by heavily armed police officers. Here's Leonardo Rocha.
Ms. Chamorro was hoping to unite the Nicaraguan opposition against the left-wing leader Daniel Ortega, who's seeking a 5th term in office. She comes from an influential family who owned the country's main daily newspaper. Her mother, Violeta Chamorro, served as president in the 1990s. But a court in the capital, Managua, has ruled that she won't be allowed to run for president in November's elections because she's facing criminal charges.
BBC News. Thousands of people have taken to the streets of Colombia's main cities to insist on their demands for less inequality and better public services. Some of the main roads in Cali, Medellin and Bogotá have been blocked, and there's a heavy police presence. The daily protest began over a month ago, triggered by government proposals to increase taxes, which have since been scrapped. Germany temporarily stopped incoming Russian flights from Russia on Wednesday in retaliation for Moscow blocking the German airline Lufthansa. Reports said flights later resumed. European airlines are boycotting the airspace over Russia's ally Belarus in compliance with a European Union protest at the diversion of a Ryanair flight to Minsk, where the authorities arrested an opposition journalist on board. The WHO says there are staggering health needs in the occupied Palestinian territories following the recent conflict between Israel and the Hamas militant group. The WHO said it was scaling up its efforts in order to help nearly 200,000 people. It called for unhindered access. A novel about Senegalese troops fighting for France in the First World War has won this year's International Booker Prize for Literature. The book, At Night All Blood is Black, is by the French writer David Diop. Here's our arts correspondent Vincent Dowd.
David Diop is Professor of Literature at the University of Pau in southwest France. At Night All Blood is Black is his second novel, and it received excellent reviews when it came out in French. The International Booker is split each year between the author and the book's translator into English, in this case Anna Moscovakis. Diop has written about Alpha, a young Senegalese soldier on the Western Front in World War I. After his friend is killed, Alpha descends into a form of insanity.
BBC News.